Hey folks, Preston with Hornady. We're continuing our series in our rifle setup. We've got this Christensen rifle here, and in the last video we bore sighted it. Before we take our first shot down range, we're actually going to clean it up a little bit and make sure there's nothing down in the barrel. It's a great idea to use a bore guide, and we highly recommend that. It's just going to help the cleaning rod enter that bore straight and prevent any ill effects from a wonky cleaning rod. So let's go ahead and get some patches run down this, and then we'll go ahead and head out to the range. All right, we folded the buttstock on this rifle, which is an awesome feature, especially for cleaning, not just carrying around, but cleaning. That makes it really nice. So I've got the bore guide inserted into it. I'm just going to take the proper caliber patch, put it on my nickel-coated Jag, which is personal preference. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of bore solvent on there. Use whichever one's your favorite. I'm just going to run a patch down it. Pretty darn clean right now, but then I'm just going to take a couple of dry patches and dry out the bore. All right, I'm pretty satisfied with that. And before we go shoot this thing for the first time after I take this bore guide out, I'm going to run a chamber mop down in the chamber just to make sure we didn't get any solvent in there. We want a dry bore and a dry chamber before we take our first shots. Now before we go out there, I like to put a little bit of grease on the lugs of the bolt and the cocking cam, and that'll keep things running nice and smooth. We'll see you out on the range. All right, we're here out at our range. We're at 100 yards. We're gonna take our first shot. I am gonna grab velocity from the lab radar here. We should be close enough to be on paper. After we take that first shot though, I am gonna adjust the scope to the shot. That way, as we break the barrel in, I can get some ideas of general accuracy as we go through the process. But let's take our first shot here. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is check the brass and make sure we don't have any pressure signs, and this brass looks absolutely great. Now, we are a little bit high and a little bit left. So I'm gonna hold the same point of aim, and I'm gonna adjust the turrets until the crosshairs are actually on that shot. And that'll get us pretty close as we move forward. After we get that done, let's head back inside and we'll get this thing cleaned, and we'll continue the break-in process. All right, so we just took our first shot out at the range, and I'm gonna get this barrel cleaned. There's a lot of schools of thought on barrel break-in, best practices for it, how many shots, and then cleaning, whether it's necessary at all. General rule of thumb, use the barrel manufacturer or the rifle manufacturer's ideas for best practices on this. You wouldn't be wrong to shoot 1 and clean, shoot 2 and clean, 3 and clean, 4 and clean, 5 and clean, and then 5 and clean. That'll give you 20 shots. It'll be nice and easy to clean from there on out. And that's what I'm gonna do with this rifle. Now I've taken the muzzle brake off. It's gonna help with cleaning. Won't get any solvent in the ports there or anything like that. It is a good idea to take your muzzle brake off and clean as you shoot it. You don't want any carbon issues building up in there. And I've seen some issues where brakes have been left on indefinitely throughout the life of the barrel. Now I've got my bore guide in again. That's very important as well. But essentially, I'm going to get this thing cleaned with patches. Now you can use a brush if you're in a hurry. Normally I do this out at the range while I'm actually breaking it in if I've got a whole bunch of time. But you can use a brush. I prefer, personal preference again here, just to use solvent and patches and let the solvent do the work. But essentially I'm just going to run a couple patches down it and leave the barrel wet and let the solvent do the work, and then we'll come back in about a half an hour to an hour and patch it out and see how we're looking. Now I'm not looking for absolutely crystal clean here. I'm just trying to make it a lot cleaner than it was and help cleaning down the road go a lot easier. Getting some juice coming out of there. Got some copper fouling, some powder fouling. Now I'm gonna let it soak and we'll come back. Once we get it cleaned, we'll head it back out to the range, shoot 2 shots, clean again, 3 shots, clean again, 4, 5, 5, and then we'll be broken in for the most part. I'll probably put 150, maybe 200 rounds on this before I call it good and ready. But we'll come back with you and get these patches mostly white coming out of there. So we've let the solvent sit in the barrel for about a half an hour now at this point, and I'm just gonna run dry patches in behind it and see how the patches are looking. Now nobody's expecting, you know, if you're doing this for the first time, nobody expects you to be able to read patches per se. But I'm still getting quite a bit of copper on this patch here. So I'm just gonna rinse and repeat. Probably another dry patch followed by wet patches, and I'll let it sit again. If you're in a big hurry, like we said, you wouldn't be wrong to use a brush. Just make sure that it's straight. I prefer nylon personally. And then we're just gonna get this thing until the majority of the carbon is off of the patches and the bulk of the copper is gone. Then we're back out to the range to shoot 2 shots and clean again. Like we talked about, there's a lot of different schools of thoughts on this. I'm gonna get this done. Just get those patches coming out pretty darn clean and you'll be headed in the right direction. Follow along as we continue our journey setting up this rifle. Probably the next video in this series is gonna be getting it sighted in, getting a good 0 angle and getting this thing in 4 off after the break-in process is complete.